Hello, it's me, Mike, with HPDS. In this video, I'll be doing a study in Genesis 38. So this will be a video on Genesis 38. So before I get started, I'll go ahead and say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father who is in heaven, hallowed be thy name. May your kingdom come. May your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Please give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us of our debt, as we forgive those in debt to us. And Lord, lead us not into temptation, but instead deliver us from the evil one. For yours is the kingdom of power and glory, Lord, forever and ever. Amen. So, Genesis 38, let me go ahead and read some of my notes here, what I've got on Genesis 38, a little outline. We'll see in Genesis 38 that... let's see, Genesis 38, verses 1 through 5, we're going to come across Judah's children. So if you remember, Judah is one of the sons of Israel, and we're going to go over this whole chapter is going to be about Judah. And the first 5 verses are about his children and who his children are. And then verses 6 through 11, we're going to see that Judah's 2 oldest children die, and Tamar, his daughter-in-law, becomes a widow. And we'll see these circumstances with Tamar here and with these 2 brothers. And then in verses 12 through 30, to end the chapter, we're going to see that Tamar deceives Judah and conceives by him. And we're going to see a whole story play out about about Judah, which is which is Israel's son. Israel is also named Jacob. Israel has one of these sons, and it's Judah. And if we remember that Judah was something like, I don't know, he could have been the 4th son, I believe is what it is. He is the 4th son. Let me go ahead and get started into reading this. So let me go ahead and pull this up, and I'll read Genesis. I'll read 38, and we'll see what the Holy Spirit brings up. All right. And it came to pass at that time that Judah went down from his brethren and turned into a certain Adulamite, whose name was Hira. And Judah saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite, whose name was Shua. And he took her and went in unto her. And she conceived and bare a son, and he called his name And she conceived again and bare a son, and she called his name Onan. And she yet again conceived and bare a son, and called his name Shelah. And he was at Chezib when she bare him. And Judah took a wife for his firstborn, whose name was Tamar. And Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord slew him. And Judah said unto Onan, Go in unto thy brother's wife, and marry her, and raise up seed to thy brother. And Onan knew that the seed should not be his. And it came to pass, when he went in unto his brother's wife, that he spilled it on the ground, lest that he should give seed to his brother. And the thing which he did displeased the Lord, wherefore he slew him also. Then said Judah to Tamar his brother-in-law, Remain a widow at thy father's house, till Shelah my son be grown. For he said, Lest peradventure he die also, as his brethren did. And Tamar went and dwelt in her father's house, and in the process of time the daughter of Shua, Judah's wife, died. And Judah was comforted, and went up unto his sheep shearers into Timnath, he and his friend Hira the Adulamite. And it was told Tamar, saying, Behold, thy father-in-law goeth up to Timnath to shear his sheep. And she put her widow's garments off from her, and covered her with the veil, and wrapped herself, and sat in an open place, which is by the way to Timnath, for she saw that Shelah was grown, and she was not given unto him to wife. When Judah saw her, he thought her to be an harlot, because she had covered her face. And he turned unto her by the way, and said, Go to, I pray thee, let me come in unto thee. For he knew not that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, What wilt thou give me, that thou mayest come in unto me? And he said, I will send thee a kid from the flock. And she said, Wilt thou give me a pledge till thou send it? And he said, What pledge shall I give thee? And she said, Thy signet, and thy bracelets, and thy staff that is in thine hand. And he gave it to her, and came in unto her, and she conceived by him. And she arose and went away, and laid by her, and she laid by her veil from her, and put on the garments of her widowhood. And Judah sent the kid by the hand of his friend the Adullamite to receive his pledge from the woman's hand, but he found her not. Then he asked the men of that place, saying, Where is the harlot that was openly by the wayside? And they said, There was no harlot in this place. And he returned to Judah and said, I cannot find her. And also the men of that place said that there was no harlot in this place. And Judah said, Let her take it to her, lest we be shamed. Behold, I sent this kid, and thou hast not found her. And it came to pass about 3 months after that it was told Judah, saying, Tamar, thy daughter-in-law, hath played the harlot, and also, behold, she is with child by whoredom. And Judah said, Bring her forth, and let her be burnt. When she was brought forth, she sent to her father-in-law, saying, By the man whose these are, am I with child. And she said, Discern, I pray thee, whose are these, the signet and bracelets and staff? And Judah acknowledged them, and said, She hath been more righteous than I, because that I gave her not to Shelah my son. And he knew her again no more. And it came to pass in the time of her travail, that, behold, twins were in her womb. And it came to pass when she travailed, that the one put out his hand, and the midwife took and bound upon his hand a scarlet thread, saying, This came out first. And it came to pass, as he drew back his hand, that, behold, his brother came out. And she said, How hast thou broken forth? This breach be upon thee. Therefore his name was called Pharez. And afterward came out his brother that had the scarlet thread upon his hand, and his name was called Zara. So that is Genesis 38 in its entirety. It's seems like a shorter chapter. It's only, like I said, about 30 verses long, and we're really dealing with Judah's son. So he has 3 children. Ultimately, 2 of them are going to die, and these 2 sons of his, I mean, they're killed by God. God found them to be wicked. So like I was getting at kind of in some of the other videos prior to this, when we get into, like, for example, chapter 35 or 37, for example, was pretty bad in itself. Remember, this is 38, and Judah, we're talking about how bad Judah is and how bad at least his children are. And we're also seeing just as bad, in Genesis 37, we saw that, I mean, Judah was alongside their brothers, and they threw Joseph into a pit. So you can see, like I said, these guys are not at all like Jesus Christ. God is using these people, and he's definitely showing not just them, but in particular those of us that now have the knowledge of the Bible. He's really showing us something about these people and how they lived. And obviously God over here was over here camera, over here camera. There you go. Ultimately, God is showing us something about what he wants, and how he wants us to act, and how he wants us to be. So let me go ahead and, like I said, I'll pull this chapter back up. I'll go line by line, and we'll see what the Holy Spirit brings to mind. So yeah, here we are. It's talking about Judah, and he takes off, and he finds this Adullamite whose name was Hara. So he makes his friend, and this friend, they go down there, and he finds, so he makes his friend named, who's Hira is his friend, and this friend is clearly some guy that is like a party buddy for Judah, and we'll see later why that is, but he also finds Judah also finds his wife, this Canaanite, and the Canaanite man is named Shua. And it's this guy Shua's daughter that Judah becomes Judah's wife. So they don't say her name. They just call her the daughter of Shua. And she conceived and bare a son, and so she's got this son named and then she has another son named Onan, and then she has a third son called Shelah. And so I'm gonna go ahead and pull this up, and let's see, do we have we're talking about Judah here. So this is Leah. We're talking about Judah. I don't have his family line written right here, but Judah is only having 3 sons over here. And we see right away that the firstborn, they don't explain why, but he was wicked in the sight of the Lord. So he was doing some wicked stuff, and God kills him. And like I said, this isn't too hard to understand, especially when you realize that Judah also was complicit in getting rid of Joseph from that last chapter. You know what they say, So Judah himself isn't the greatest guy. It turns out that these people are really, Isaac, Jacob, Israel, and them. They're really, it was bad enough when Esau was becoming like these people. These, Isaac's children or Jacob's children, Israel's children, they're very much like these Canaanites. And in fact, here's Judah just taking a Canaanite wife. And once again, this is something that was upsetting to uh, to remember when this was upsetting to Isaac and his wife Rebecca, and now these are the grandchildren of them, and these kids they're also really bad. They're really bad, aren't they? They're just doing bad things, becoming more and more like these Canaanites. And so after dies, the eldest son dies, Judah goes to eat Onan, and they have some sort of a custom where, since the brother died, Onan is supposed to take the wife, marry her, and have kids on behalf of the dead brother. So he's supposed to have children on behalf of And so Onan doesn't like this because he knows, if I have any kids with this woman, all of that stuff is going to go to her and to her child, when I really just wanted to come to me and to my stuff. So he's really trying to take the stuff of his brother instead of giving his brother's wife, taking care of her. He doesn't even care about her. He doesn't want to give his brother's stuff to her. He just wants to keep it for himself. And so when it comes to pass that, obviously he was supposed to go in and sleep with her, and she was supposed to, because the whole point of her survival was having some kids so that she could inherit some things and live by the blessings of her children. That's kind of the whole point of how these women are treated. The more children they had, the more stuff, especially male children. So for every male child that they had, they got stuff. The dad gave them stuff basically for the male child, and so the more they had, the more comfortable the women were. And so she obviously is being gypped out of any inheritance. Here's Judah. Judah gives him one wife, which is and nothing happens. And in fact, he dies. And now Onan is also being wicked to her, not trying to help her out, not trying to give her any children, especially when God said to go multiply and be fruitful. So here's Onan just completely not caring about God and God's will at all, or God's blessings or God's cursings. They don't even care anymore. They're just really not paying attention. And so he would come in and he would spill his seed on the ground. So, it's the whole, I won't mention it sexually what it is, but he's going in, he's sleeping with her, and when it's coming towards the end, he just puts it on the ground because he doesn't want to give her any seeds. He doesn't want to give his brother's stuff to her. And of course, this thing displeases the Lord, and so God calls him evil, and he kills him too. So it doesn't mention how, but God is telling Moses here, I killed Onan, I killed because they were wicked. I killed Judah's children. They weren't doing very well, and then look what Judah did himself. And so basically Tamar is ripped out. She's got no husband. She's got no means for economic or financial, stability. She's got nothing. So Judah tells her to go to your dad's house, your father's house, until the third, maybe, when he grows up, then I'll give you to him to marry, because then you can have some of his stuff. And until then, go stay at your father's house and be a widow. And so she has to go back to her father's house. And mind you, now she's been defiled at this point. Remember, it's not, they're treated almost like how cars are treated in this day and age, where The more used it is, the less valuable it becomes. So she's less and less valuable now that she's got two widows. She's had two husbands now, and she's got nothing. She's back stuck at her dad's house. Nothing for this woman. She's really, like I said, she's getting ripped off. Um, and then eventually the story moves on into verse 12. And in verse 12, we start seeing right away Shua, the daughter of Shua, which is Judah's wife. Judah's wife dies. And so Judah was comforted. And you see that he goes up to his friend and he's hanging out with his friend Hira. So that's what I mean by Hira's like his party buddy, because after Judah's wife died, he starts hanging out with Hira over here, and they're up there and whatever they're doing, here he goes. He sees this, Tamar hears about it, and she's hearing about these two guys partying. So she goes up there to Timnath, where he's supposedly shearing his sheep. And so he gets up there, and she dresses up kind of like a prostitute. And sure enough, here comes Judah, and he sees her, and he says, "Oh, look, it's a prostitute, a harlot, a prostitute." And he tells her, "Hey, let me, sleep with you. Let's have some fun. I'm partying over here with my buddy, Hira. After my wife's dead, I can do whatever I want, I guess. So he goes and he sleeps with her, thinking that she's a prostitute. And sure enough, she's a prostitute, and he tells her, "I'm gonna send you a kid from the flock. I'm gonna send you one of these kids, these animals, and won't you give me And she says, "Well, give me a pledge until you send it." And he's all, "Sure, whatever you need." And she's all, "Just give me, that ring and some bracelets and that staff." So he gives it to her, thinking nothing of it, thinking, "Oh, she'll give it back." It's kind of like giving her an ID, and he's all like, "Well, she'll give me this stuff back when I send this kid from the flock over there." And so they have sex. They go about their little prostitution right here. He's buying a prostitute, and she gets pregnant. She takes off, and she goes home. And then so Judah here, he sends his friend over here, the Adulamite. He sends his friend to go pay her with this kid of the flock, and he goes, and the Adulamite here can't find her. Hero over here can't find her. And he goes back to her and he says, well, he looks around for her, and they tell her, "We don't know what you're talking about. We don't know about this harlot that's been out there. Maybe, whatever. We haven't noticed one. So there's no one there." And so he goes and he returns to Judah, and he tells her, "I don't know who this harlot was. There's nobody there. So some strange, she just has your stuff." And so Judah says, "Let her take it to her, lest we be ashamed. Behold, I sent this kid, and thou hast not found her." So he's really saying, well, I guess this woman didn't want, um, this prostitute didn't want the stuff I tried to pay her. And he's all, well, let's not make too big of a deal of it, because, she still has some of his things, his ID, if you think about it. And he doesn't want to be shamed. So he's let's not be looking around all over the place looking for a prostitute, because now everybody's going to know I'm just looking for a prostitute, knowing his business. So he really doesn't want it to be known that he picked up a prostitute and that he was trying to pay for a prostitute, and she took off without taking payment. And then we see, though, here we come to kind of one of these double standards, because now we're on 24. We're seeing that 3 months later, Judah gets told, saying, "Hey, your daughter-in-law Tamar, she was a prostitute, and she has played, look, she's pregnant by whoredom." And so she's all, "Ooh, bring her out, let's burn her." So this guy himself, it's okay for him to pick up prostitutes, but as soon as he hears about somebody close to him being a prostitute, he wants to burn her to death. And so they bring her forth, like they're gonna kill her. And then they ask her, who, well, she sends word saying, "Look, by the man whose these are, am I with child." And she said, "Discern, I pray thee, whose are these, the signet and bracelets and staff?" And of course, he recognizes them, and he gets really like, "Oh no, it was her that I slept with. She was the prostitute." And that's why he realizes that he was supposed to have given Sheila to her a while ago. He's really not thinking much of her. He's, like I said, Judah is really being kind of selfish over here. and it's clearly visible in his children. That's why Onan died too. Onan was being very selfish. He wasn't trying to help this woman out. He wasn't trying to give her a family or give her any, economic benefits or anything. And Judah should have given Sheila to her a while back. Um, but clearly he wasn't thinking of her. Like, he was like, whatever, she's poor, she's a widow. Like I said, her value had gone down. So Judah was probably looking around for a different wife for this kid, Sheila. He's probably looking for a different wife. But now that Judah has had this child with her, and she's pregnant, guess what? And it says, and he knows her again no more. Basically, he doesn't ever sleep with her again. And he's realizing his mistake. And more than that, he's realizing that now this woman shares in the inheritance of all of his stuff now. So now, instead of it being for one of his sons, she was supposed to be one of his sons. Well, now this woman, this prostitute, basically, she is now taking a whole bunch of, now she's inheriting in Judah's things, instead of one of Judah's sons' things. She basically now is inheriting straight from Judah, like a wife of his own. And so that's why it's kind of a big deal. And he says, and he doesn't do anything to her, but he just doesn't know her again anymore. And so basically, it's like a wife that he slept with one time, and it was a very expensive prostitute, is ultimately what it ends up being for Judah. It ends up being an extremely expensive prostitute, something that ends up inheriting a lot of his household. And so then it came to pass in the time of her travail that, behold, twins were in her womb. So not only does she have a baby, she has twins from Judah. And so it says, look, and there's an interesting story about it where one of them comes out and the midwife wraps a little scarlet thread around and saying, here comes out this one. But then the hand comes back in and out comes the other brother. And the other brother gets born first, and his name is Pharez. And then out comes the other brother that had the scarlet thread upon his hand, and his name was Zara. And so that's an interesting story about Judah and his offspring. Because these are Judah's children now, his twins. So, like I said, not only does she have one, but she has two kids from him. So she definitely ultimately inherits the portions that would have belonged to her two husbands. Remember? So and Onan, they were supposed to, provide for her, and they didn't provide for her. And in fact, they were evil, and God ended up killing them because of how evil they were and how they weren't providing for his wife over here. And it ends up being that Judah ends up having to do it for them. They're dead, and Judah ends up, she has two children in his place. So now these are Judah's children. And basically, he's got two more sons that basically replace his two dead sons, and Onan. And now he's got three sons again. And his youngest is now his oldest. And he's got these two children from this prostitute that he only slept with once. So he didn't even really get to take her as a real wife. So that's kind of this Genesis 38 right there. I'll go ahead and end this video right here. That was Genesis 38. There's a lot always going on. Like I said, I'll just recap it. I'll recap it from kind of 37. 37 is kind of showing how these children of Israel, Judah included, aren't the greatest children. They're, and they're all kind of complicit in taking Joseph and selling him out there to the Egyptians. So and meanwhile, Israel thinks that Joseph is dead. So these kids are getting pretty bad, and they're really learning from these Canaanites, and they're really absorbing the culture of the Canaanites around them. And when they really should be staying clean and more holy, they're just becoming more and more like these Canaanites. Every single generation is just getting more and more like these Canaanites, who are just they do whatever they want. They kill. They're evil people. They're gonna be idolaters. They're sleeping with prostitutes. They're really they're being hypocritical. So a lot of things is going on, and that's what we get into Genesis 38, where it's just a story of Judah, and Judah's two kids are They're so bad that God takes it upon himself to kill them. So God has to kill them. Um, and then Tamar, who's waiting there as part of she's waiting and waiting like a good wife, and the whole time, Judah's just mistreating her. So she takes it upon herself, and she has to go out there, and she basically has to become a prostitute because Judah and his sons just weren't taking care of her. And it becomes a big deal because now her sons and herself included, she becomes heir to Judah's household all of a sudden. And instead of being like a secondary heir through one of his kids, one of his children, she becomes a primary heir with two of his three children. So now she is, she gets 2/3 of his stuff, or his household at the end. So, but like I said, I'll go ahead and end it here. That's Genesis 38. If please like the video and subscribe to the channel for further Bible studies. And I'll say to whoever may be watching this, God bless you. And I pray that we all bless Jesus Christ. And may Jesus Christ bless all of us. Amen.